5 items from the hardware store, total cost under $15, sitting right here in my hand. Every single one of them replaces something the fishing industry sells you for 10 times the price with a base logo. I have spent over $200 on branded terminal tackle accessories that do the exact same job as these. The plumbing aisle, the electrical aisle, the automotive section, that is where your real tackle shop is hiding. One of these 5 things is carried by tournament professionals who will never mention it on camera or in interviews. They keep quiet because it gives them a genuine edge when real money is on the line every single weekend. I know that sounds like a bold claim, so let me back it up with 4 decades of proof right now. By the time we are done here, you will walk into the nearest Home Depot and build a kit for pocket change. Here is what I am going to give you in the next few minutes. 5 exact product names with sizes and aisle locations. Not vague suggestions, not theories I read on some internet forum at 2 in the morning last Thursday night. Every item has been in my boat for years, tested under tournament pressure, and I still reach for them today. I will show you why each one works as well or better than the expensive fishing version it replaces completely. After this, you can hit Lowe's or Home Depot and grab everything for less than a single bag of soft plastics costs. I have done the math on the savings, and the number is going to make some of you angry at how long you overpaid. But first, let me tell you who I am and why you should trust a word coming out of my mouth right now. That story starts about 40 years ago on a muddy reservoir bank in the middle of nowhere with borrowed tackle. My name is Jim Callahan. Most folks on the water just call me Big Jim, and that works fine by me. I've been chasing largemouth bass across reservoirs and natural lakes for over 40 years in every kind of weather imaginable. 5 times I have taken home the Regional Angler of the Year title, and they put me in the local tournament Hall of Fame. I am not telling you that to brag. I am telling you so you know this is not my first rodeo out here. I spend my own money on every single piece of gear in my boat. No sponsors, no free product, no brand loyalty deals. For the first 20 years of my career, I was the fool who bought every premium package on the shelf. If it had a fancy label and a pro staff endorsement, my wallet was already open before I read the description. Then one afternoon at a weigh-in, an old angler named Earl changed everything I thought I knew about tackle spending. Earl was in his 70s, fished from a beat-up aluminum John boat, and consistently outweighed guys running $60,000 rigs. After a tournament where he took first and I took fifth, I finally swallowed my pride and asked him directly. He popped open his tackle trays right there at the cleaning station, and I could not believe my eyes, honestly. Half his terminal tackle came from the plumbing department, his real maintenance kit was automotive supplies, and his rigging accessories were electrical. I stood there staring at brass fittings and heat shrink tubing while this man had just weighed in 22 pounds of bass. He looked at me and said something I have never forgotten. The fish do not read the packaging, Jim. That single conversation saved me thousands of dollars over the next 2 decades of serious competitive fishing on the water. Everything I'm about to show you traces back to that afternoon and what Earl taught me at that folding table. All right, let us get right into it. Item number 1, and this one alone saved me over $50 a season. I am talking about brass cap fittings from the plumbing aisle, the kind plumbers use to cap off small pipe ends. Back in 2014, I was driving to a tournament at 4 in the morning and realized my entire drop shot weight box was sitting on the kitchen counter. The tackle shop was 30 miles in the wrong direction, and I had maybe 40 minutes before the launch window closed completely. Desperation makes you creative, so I pulled into a hardware store and walked straight to the plumbing section, hoping for anything. I found brass cap fittings, small, heavy, perfectly rounded, sitting in a bin for 29 cents each, just waiting there. I grabbed a handful, drilled a tiny hole through each one with a pocket bit in the parking lot in about 5 minutes. I rigged them on my drop shot setup, launched the boat, and finished second place that day with plumbing parts as weights. Here is why those brass caps actually work, and in some conditions they work better than what you are currently buying. The 3/8 inch and 1/2 inch sizes match standard drop shot and Ned rig weight profiles almost perfectly in shape and mass. Brass runs about 8.5 grams per cubic centimeter versus lead at 11.3. Slightly lighter means a slower fall rate. On pressured water where fish have seen every presentation, that subtle slower descent triggers bites other guys are not getting today. The dome shape sits upright on rocky bottom without rolling around, and drilling a hole takes 10 seconds with a standard 1/16 inch bit. Now here is the part nobody expects. Brass rings sharper and louder than lead when it contacts hard bottom structure. On gravel points and shell beds, that distinct acoustic signature actually pulls in curious bass, especially smallmouth on clear reservoirs. A 10-pack of these fittings runs about $3 versus $30 to $40 for branded tungsten drop shot weights in any tackle shop. I customize mine depending on the situation, and it takes almost no effort to dial them in for different water. For stained water, I hit a batch with matte black spray paint from the garage shelf. Takes 5 minutes to coat 20 of them. In clear water, I leave the natural brass finish because it throws a subtle flash that looks like a small crawdad shell sitting on bottom. I fix them to the line using a small piece of heat shrink tubing cinched tight. No toothpicks breaking inside, no superglue weakening your fluorocarbon. One critical warning here, and I need you to hear this part clearly before you go shopping for these things tomorrow. Never buy zinc-coated or galvanized fittings. Zinc leaches into the water and is toxic to fish in those concentrations over time. Some tournament circuits and state wildlife agencies have specific regulations banning zinc-based terminal tackle on their waters entirely. Always look for fittings stamped solid brass or copper on the bin label, and you will be perfectly fine out there. But if that one surprised you, the next item is something you have walked past 100 times without ever thinking about fishing. Item number 2, a $3 can that replaces $25 worth of real lubricant and protectant from the tackle shop. I am talking about automotive silicone spray, and I was dead wrong about this stuff for years before I tried it myself. In 2016, a nasty thunderstorm caught me on open water for 20 minutes and absolutely soaked my favorite Shimano Curado baitcaster completely. Back at the marina, a boat mechanic heard me complaining and said, "Just use CRC silicone spray. Same chemistry without the fishing tax." I was skeptical, but I sprayed it down, worked the handle a few times, and that reel ran smoother than it had in months, honestly. That was 8 years ago, and that same Curado is still in my rod locker rotation fishing every single weekend of the season. The key is buying 100% silicone formula with 0 petroleum distillates. Petroleum will destroy plastic bushings and swell rubber seals fast. CRC heavy-duty silicone or 3M silicone lubricant both cost under $4 and last 2 to 3 full seasons of regular maintenance use. Hit the bearings on both sides of the spool, the bale wire pivots on your spinning reels, and the level wind mechanism on bait casters. Spray the handle knob bearings and the outside of the drag knob housing to keep water from creeping in after rainstorms. But never spray it on your drag washers. Drag systems need specific grease to hold consistent pressure under a fighting fish. I learned that lesson the hard way on a different reel when a good bass pulled drag that should not have been slipping at all. Here is a bonus trick that I honestly did not believe until I measured it myself with a tape measure in an open field. A light pass of silicone spray across your rod guides reduces line friction enough to add 8 to 12 feet per cast consistently every time. Over a full day of fishing, that is hundreds of extra feet of water you are covering that the angler next to you is not. Now we are getting to the big one. Item number 3 is the one tournament pros carry in every boat but never discuss publicly. Item number 4, the single most versatile thing in my entire tackle bag, and it costs less than a penny each. I am talking about plain black cable ties from the electrical aisle, the ones most people use for bundling wires. About 4 years ago, I was fishing a morning tournament and the vertical rod holder bolted to my console just snapped clean off. The plastic bracket had been baking in the sun for 6 seasons and finally gave up the ghost right when I needed it. I had 6 hours of fishing ahead of me and 4 rods that needed to stay put while I ran between spots. I reached into the console, grabbed 3 heavy-duty black zip ties, cinched that holder back to the rail, and trimmed the tails with my line cutters. That repair took maybe 90 seconds, and I did not think about it again for the rest of the day on the water. That was 4 seasons ago, and I am telling you, those 3 zip ties are still holding that rod holder right now today. But holding a rod holder together is honestly the least interesting thing these little strips of nylon can do for a fisherman. The first trick I use them for constantly is locking silicone skirts onto jig heads so they never come loose again. Those little rubber bands that come on factory jigs dry out in the heat, crack after a few months in the tackle box, and suddenly your skirt falls apart mid-retrieve. A small zip tie cinched around that skirt collar grips those strands permanently. It will never rot, never crack, never let go of anything. I have jigs in my rotation right now wearing zip tie collars that have boated well over 100 bass without a single strand pulling free. The second trick is making your own weed guards, and this one is almost too simple to believe until you try it yourself. Cut the locking head off a single zip tie, trim the remaining strip at a sharp angle, and secure it to the hook eye with thread and a drop of super glue. That stiff nylon strip deflects grass and brush exactly like a commercial fiber guard, and you can replace it in 30 seconds on the water. The third use is the one that turns a $2 bag of zip ties into the most practical emergency kit you will ever carry in a boat. I bundle my rods in pairs for transport, tip to butt, secured at 3 points, and they have never banged together or scratched a guide since I started doing that. When a real seat locking ring stripped out on me during a tournament, a zip tie held that reel foot tight for 8 straight hours of heavy casting. I have reattached trolling motor cables, secured a landing net to a cleat when the magnetic holder failed, and even fixed a live well lid hinge at 6 in the morning before launch. If something breaks on the water, a zip tie will get you through the day and probably through the rest of the season too. For the guys who troll, here is a bonus. A small colored zip tie every 10 feet on your downrigger cable gives you a quick visual depth reference without watching the counter. That is especially handy on older manual downriggers where the footage counter stopped working sometime during the Clinton administration, like mine did years ago. Now, here is a detail that separates a zip tie that lasts one summer from one that lasts 5 full seasons on the water. Standard white or natural colored zip ties are not UV stabilized, and most people have no idea that matters until things start breaking. After one summer of direct sunlight on the deck of a boat, those clear ties become brittle, lose their grip strength, and snap under any real load. That is why the jig skirt collar you installed in April crumbles in your fingers by August and leaves you wondering what went wrong out there. In the same aisle, right next to the white ones, you will find bags of black UV-resistant zip ties made specifically for outdoor use. They cost the exact same price, and the only difference is the color and the words UV stabilized printed on the package somewhere. I switched to exclusively black UV-rated ties over a decade ago, and I have not had a single one fail from sun damage in all that time. Now, everything up to this point has been pretty straightforward. Hardware store parts doing fishing jobs for less money and doing them well. But item number 5 is where it gets interesting and maybe a little controversial because some of you are going to think I have completely lost my mind. Item number 5, and yeah, I know exactly how this sounds, is Vaseline, plain old petroleum jelly from the household aisle. Let me take you back to the mid-90s when I was still learning everything I could from Earl, the old-timer who rewired my entire approach to tackle. One afternoon I was sitting in his John boat watching him prep gear for the next morning, and he pulled out a small jar of Vaseline. He scooped a dab with his index finger, rubbed it across the ferrule joint of his 2-piece casting rod, then smeared a thin coat on every single treble hook in his crankbait box without hesitation. Then, and this is the part that made me stare, he mixed a tiny amount with garlic oil and worked it into a soft plastic worm. I looked at him and said, "Earl, have you lost your mind?" And he just smiled at me with that patient grin he always had. He said, "Boy, I have been catching more fish than you for 20 years, so maybe stop asking questions and start paying attention already." Earl was right about that, and he was right about the Vaseline too. I just needed a few years to admit it to myself. So here is why this $1.50 jar of petroleum jelly deserves a permanent spot in every tackle bag you own right now. A thin layer on the male ferrule of a multi-piece rod creates a snug, airtight seal that prevents sections from locking together permanently in humid weather. That sticking problem ruins more rod joints than anything else I have seen in 4 decades, especially down here in the southern heat and humidity. This is functionally identical to what branded ferrule wax does. because ferrule wax is mostly petroleum jelly with a touch of beeswax added to justify the price tag. Hardy and Orvis charge $8 to $12 for a tiny tube of the stuff that lasts maybe one season if you are careful with it. A full jar of Vaseline costs $1.50 and contains enough product to treat every rod you own for the next 5 or 6 years easily. The second use is corrosion protection. A micro-thin coat on treble hooks, split rings, snap swivels, and any exposed metal creates a moisture barrier that stops rust cold. I coat my entire crankbait box once at the start of each season, and I rarely see a speck of orange on any hook all year long, even in this humidity. Now, here's the part that sounds crazy until you understand the science behind why it actually works so well on the water. Petroleum jelly is hydrophobic. It does not dissolve in water, it does not wash off on the first cast, and it does not break down quickly. When you mix a small amount with a concentrated fish attractant like garlic oil or anise extract, the jelly holds that scent on the surface of a soft plastic bait dramatically longer than any water-soluble spray or dip product can. I estimate my Vaseline-based scent application lasts 3 to 4 times longer per cast than the commercial spray-on attractants I used to buy. The fourth use is drag washer lubrication on budget reels. The $30 ugly stick combos, the kids' first spinning reels, anything with basic felt washers inside. A thin application keeps the drag smooth and consistent without spending $15 on specialty grease for a reel that costs less than a pizza dinner. Now I know some of you are already typing, "Big Jim, petroleum jelly will destroy your fishing line and eat through your fluorocarbon overnight." I have heard that argument on every forum and Facebook group for the last 15 years, so let me address it directly and honestly right now. In 40 years of applying Vaseline to ferrules, hooks, and metal components, I have never once seen line damage I could trace back to it, because I put it on metal and joints, not on the line itself. A thin film on a hook shank does not migrate onto your fluorocarbon in any meaningful way during normal fishing conditions out there. Now, I know some of you are going to disagree with me on this one, and that is genuinely fine with me. Tell me in the comments why you think I am wrong, or tell me you have been doing this for years without a single problem, because I want that honest conversation. Let me lay out the final numbers so you can see exactly what we are talking about in real dollars saved this season. Brass cap fittings, 10-pack, $3 Datsun, silicone spray, 1 can, $4 Datsun, heat shrink tubing assortment, $6 Datsun, black UV resistant zip ties, 100-pack, $3 Datsun, petroleum jelly, 1 jar, $2 Datsun, grand total approximately $18 for everything. The fishing branded equivalents those 5 items replace add up to over $200 when you count tungsten weights, real lubricant, worm stoppers, peg kits, trailer keepers, skirt bands, weed guards, ferrule wax, corrosion inhibitor, and all the miscellaneous small accessories that nickel and dime your wallet across a full season. That is more than $180 back in your pocket on the first shopping trip alone, and the savings grow over time because these hardware store products come in larger quantities. The silicone spray lasts 2 or 3 seasons, the zip ties number in the hundreds, and that jar of Vaseline will outlast most of your reels honestly. Put that $180 where it actually matters. A full tank of gas for the boat, 3 bags of premium soft plastics, or entry fees for 2 more weekend tournaments this fall. That is real money staying with you instead of going to a marketing department that slapped a fish logo on a product from the same factory overseas. After 40 years on the water, the most important thing I have learned has nothing to do with lure color or rod action or which electronics package costs the most money. It is this: the fish do not know whether your drop shot weight came from the tackle shop or the plumbing aisle at Home Depot. They do not care if your reel was lubricated with $12 boutique oil or a $3 can of silicone spray from the automotive section. They respond to presentation, timing, and location. Everything else is packaging designed to separate you from your money before you ever reach the water. Earl proved that truth every single weekend from a 1987 aluminum John boat with a trolling motor that sounded like a broken coffee grinder. His tackle trays were full of hardware store parts, hand-poured jigs, and homemade spinner baits that looked rough but fished beautifully in every condition. He caught a 10-pound, 2-ounce largemouth that still holds the lake record while guys in $60,000 bass boats went home empty-handed wondering what they did wrong. So here's my challenge to you. Next time you walk into any hardware store, spend 20 minutes in the plumbing and electrical aisles looking at everything with a fisherman's eyes. You will find at least 2 or 3 items I never even mentioned today, and when you do, come back here and share them in the comments so we all get better together. Next time, I am going to show you something most bass fishermen get completely wrong about water temperature, and it connects directly to one of the 5 items from today, but I will let you guess which one until then. If this video saved you even 10 bucks, hit that subscribe button right here. I have got a lot more coming, and every single video is built the same way with real tricks from somebody who actually fishes. Drop a like if any of these 5 were new to you, and tell me which one you are going to try first because I read every single comment down there. Remember, the fish do not care what brand name is on your gear or how much you paid for any of it at the store. They only care about what is on the end of your line and how you put it in front of them out there. Save your money, sharpen your skills, and let the fish tell you what matters. Tight lines, folks.